in managing groups. In 1986, he placed an ad in his local paper which would give him his big chance.
I always had what it takes, and I knew I could do the job. And obviously a lot of bands, I saw a lot of bands, and people did ask me to manage them, and I refused a lot. Well, I did, I refused everyone.
I could have given Gareth a piece of wood and said, compare the merits of this piece of wood to this album, and he would have said, I can't tell the difference.
A lot of the so-called Manchester music scene, this probably includes Tony Wilson, Howard Jones, they didn't know about my background. I mean, remember, I'd had Keith Moon in a Ford Zephyr, driving him around Manchester.
He now tells everybody that he was a mod in the 60s and, you know, he was a sort of ace face, which is laughable, you know. As far as I'm aware, Gareth never had any musical taste whatsoever.
Despite these question marks over his musical pedigree, Evans' search paid off when a young, managerless band called the Stone Roses turned up unannounced at the International.
I didn't really have to convince the band that I was the manager for them, because they came to a lot of the gigs we did. A lot may be an exaggeration, but they saw I always had a small entourage and I was always around. And maybe I looked the part in those days. I was a lot younger.
First meeting with Gareth Evans, he was very, very cheesy the whole way through. All the time he had a roll of money with a rubber band around it. And every time he stood up or sat down, this money would drop out. Just constant. Like, look at me, I've got money, which was just farcical.
I really do believe they saw something about me.
Gareth was one of those men who got a bit of a paunch, slightly overweight, wearing tracksuit bottoms with a piss stain on the front and an old pair of trainers.
Halfway through the meeting, Evans played his trump card.
He said, I sell underpants. He dropped his trousers and he said, I'll sell these. It was just insane.
I only pulled my trousers down, showed my knickers. It went no further.
Swayed by Evans' sophisticated selling technique, the band sat down to discuss a contract.
It was a parental guardianship agreement rather than a music business management agreement, which gave him all sorts of rights over all of us, you know.
Crucially, the contract gave Evans and his business partner a hefty third of the band's earnings for a staggering 10 years.
I think you have to have 10 years with a band if you're serious about it. You know, what is this 1 year and 2 years and 3 years? You know, it's a load of nonsense.
Someone who's seen more than his fair share of management contracts is music lawyer James Ware.
Looking at a management contract which contains a commission of 33.33% on gross revenue, that's before you've taken any expenses, and a 10-year term, we're looking at a contract that's not only extortionate, it's outrageous.
So outrageous that Andy Cousins refused to sign. With no official contract, Gareth Evans now faced the problem of what to do about the rebel, Andy Cousins.
I wasn't keen to get Andy out. I never thought of it until John Squire told me he didn't like writing with Andy in a low voice. And he said to me he had to go, but he didn't know how to do it, so I did it.
Evans' method was simple but effective, to drive a wedge between Cousins and the rest of the band, in particular singer Ian Brown and lead guitarist John Squire.
They were doing most of the songs at that point. Andy Cousins was doing some, but I straight away thought McCartney and Lennon, Squire and Brown.
Gareth wanting me out was nothing to do with creative hubs or any of those things. It was purely a control aspect from his point of view.
Andy didn't have any talent. Andy was an old-style rocker, and that wasn't the way they were going.
With Cousins refusing to budge, events took a dramatic turn.
Gareth offered me 10,000 quid to leave the band. I should have taken it because he was desperate to get rid of me.
If I'd have made Andy Cousins a cash offer to make him leave, and maybe I did, Maybe I did. He would have took the money. There isn't a man on this planet that wouldn't have took £10,000.
Finally, the dispute came to a head.
We had a gig in Dublin and I'd got something to do on the Monday morning. So I booked myself a plane home. I didn't think anything of it.
Smelling blood, Evans accused Cousins of being disloyal.
I blew my top. I was very annoyed. What a dramatic statement, but they went in a van together, they should come back together.
For someone to miss that journey back to me is wrong, you know, is wrong. And I could see in the band's eyes that they weren't too chuffed about it.
I think he arrived at the offices of the International and started talking to me, and I think between myself and the doorman we tried to wash his hair in the toilet.
He's a liar. I was a very nasty young individual and no, he never ever laid a hand on me.
In front of the rest of the band, Evans launched into Cousins.
Basically, I was the most disloyal person on the planet and I wasn't really interested in what he had to say about it, but I turned round to John and Ian and said, "Are you having this?" Because he was there shouting to the left up and they were sat there. I said, "Are you having this?" And they both went, so I just put my hand left.
With Cousins out of the way, Evans at last got his contract. In November 1986, over bowls of spaghetti bolognese, the band met to sign on the dotted line.
It surprises me even to this day that John and Ian, who were my closest friends, fell hook, line and sinker for his money dropping and free haircuts and taking him out for a meal. Even now I can't believe it, you know, and that was all it was with him. I think it was just a control thing.
Despite his victory, Evans couldn't afford to sit back. It was now time to deliver. Above all, he realised that he had to find the Stone Roses a new record deal, but his eventual choice of label would leave everyone scratching their heads.
They'd been hyped all around the record industry, played to every label. Record companies just didn't want to know, even though I had the International.
In desperation, Evans took the drastic step of approaching obscure heavy metal label FM Revolver, run by elaborately coiffured rocker Paul Birch.
We were a rock label, and we always have been, and you know, by that definition we'd say we would do every kind of rock, you know, punk, metal, indie, every kind of guitar music.
I knew they weren't the right label because Paul Birch had leopard skin trousers on, hair down to his waist, and was smoking some sort of funny cigarette.
We met Gareth and he came across as a really, really nice bloke.
With FM Revolver chomping at the bit, Evans's only problem was getting the band to agree to the deal.
I couldn't get them in the office. John Squire walked in and made an excuse to leave the office, and he was outside on the lawn in hysterics. I think Paul Birch had a hairnet on with leopard skin trousers that day, but Ian Brown knew they needed a single.
The band eventually signed and soon found themselves in the studio to record a song that would change the way people viewed the Stone Roses once and for all.
I remember in Sally Cinnamon for the first time and thinking, I can do that, you know. I can write songs like that. And it was just